بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا ونبينا ومولانا محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين وبعد السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته. Beloved brothers and sisters in Islam, Alhamdulillah, we are in Kitabun Nikah, and this evening we look at a very interesting section, subhanAllah. There's so much benefit, so much fa'idah that comes from this section. We are looking at of the arkan of the marriage. And as I was preparing for this evening's fiqh lesson, I revised some related laws which I think benefit everyone, even if, of course, you are married already, but just to really have the knowledge of these areas. So when we look at the arkan, the pillars of marriage, what is needed for the marital contract to take place? What is critical for that to actually be there? And of the things that are mentioned for that contract, remember we defined marriage as a contract. Many forget, many husbands and wives forget that they are in a contract. But it is an act, it is a contract. And in order for that contracting to occur, that process requires that we have certain elements in place. So we go into the text, and the Shaykh writes, وَلَا يَصِحُّ عَقْدُ النِّكَاحِ إِلَّا بِوَلِيٍّ وَشَاهِدَيْ عَدْلٍ. That a marriage contract is invalid without the presence of the bride's guardian, the wali, and two upright witnesses. So in order for that contract to occur, the wali has to be present, and we're going to unpack that, and two upright witnesses. And then the author continues, وَيَفْتَقِرُ الْوَلِي وَالشَّاهِدَانِ إِلَى سِتَّةِ شَرَائِطٍ. That the guardian, the wali, and the witnesses must meet the following conditions. They must meet the following 6 conditions. That the guardian, the wali, and the witnesses. So when we reflect on who gets to sign a marriage certificate, who's serving as the actual witnesses, these conditions must be met. Muslim, the wali and the witnesses must be Muslim. They must be baligh, mature. They must be of sound mind. They must be free, which generally everyone is free today. They have to be male, and they have to have adala. They have to have this honesty, this justice, this trustworthiness. And the point of the wali is a very important point, because the Prophet ﷺ highlighted La nikaha illa biwaliyin, that there can't be a nikah except with a wali present. And so I'm sure in our communities we are also familiar with two terms, wali and wakil. And there's a difference between them. The right of the marriage is with the wali. The authority is with the wali, the bride's wali. That wali, when he transfers it to the alim, that is the process of tawkeel. He makes the alim wakil. So with the wali present, the wali then signs a page or says to the jama'ah, as we've seen at nikahs, I appoint Maulana so-and-so, Sheikh so-and-so. That appointment is tawkeel, to be the wakil. And when we explore, who is the wali, very important aspect. Let me just describe some of the qualities. Of course, we've seen that the wali must be Muslim and fulfill all of those. Must be male, Muslim, mature, of sound mind, free, and upright. But the wali starts off essentially with the father. And I will go into the chain next week, inshallah. But there are times when the blood Muslim father is not the legitimate wali of the bride. That's a very important part that we often don't speak about in our community. So I thought, let me raise it this evening. So when a man is intimate with a lady outside of marriage, and the lady falls pregnant, this is when the situation now needs further deliberation in fiqh. So let me talk about the agreed upon view that if the parents were not married when that lady, that girl was born, the ulama, the madhahib agree that he no longer qualifies, that blood father no longer qualifies to be wali. That daughter essentially loses two things from that man. Wilaya, that man is no longer her wali, so he can't hand her over for marriage, and she no longer inherits from him by default. So if you paid careful attention to Dr. Shaykh Munir's presentation last week, when he spoke about inheritance, he highlighted the point that in your bequest section of your will, you have to list children born out of wedlock. So that is the agreed upon view in fiqh, that if you were not married to, the lady and the child was born in accordance with the laws of inheritance, that child, male or female, won't inherit. By default, you actually have to put them into the bequests, the wasiyah section of the will. This is a very important point because I administer wills in the city, and it becomes a debated point in families where they would report, Sheikh, Titi or Buta was born out of wedlock. And they alert me to it because we must now take them out of inheritance. So very important point, but that will leave for inheritance discussion. So the wali, if the father was not married to the lady, and then the lady gave birth, the man is not the wali. The area of debate in fiqh is if the father, and this was, I think, a teaching our elders in previous, generations would often say that if the lady falls pregnant, you must now get married to her to make the matter right. This was a common understanding, do the right thing and marry her now. And ulama based it on the view that, okay, the child should have a father, and they also used a minor opinion in fiqh, and I'm using the word minor here, that if you marry the lady and you do it within 3 months of that lady falling pregnant, essentially allowing 6 months for a pregnancy after the nikah, then there's an opinion in the Shafi'i madhab that we could attribute. We could. But if you go into the opinions, they say, but if the mother confirms that she fell pregnant prior to the nikah, then the child is exempted from wilaya and inheritance. Wilaya, of course, if it's a lady. So now the point, common question. If this is the scenario for that lady, who is her wali? She has the authority. And she has to transfer it to the imam, to the sheikh, to the head of the masjid or an Islamic center. And she transfers and she makes that person what we call wali daruri, the urgent, the necessary wali, because a wali is still needed for the nikah. And so that lady must appoint the sheikh, the maulana, to be the wali and then to serve as the person who authorizes the marriage. And the same applies to a lady who reverts. So a lady who reverts, and at the time of her nikah, her father, and the line that we'll explore next week, if no one is Muslim, then the power is in her hand. Okay? And she then appoints again the Maulana, the Imam, the Sheikh to act as the wali in that moment. So this is a very important point. May Allah grant Sheikh Shamil Jannatul Firdaus. I reflect on the very first nikahs I performed in this masjid many, many years ago. And I performed the nikah under Sheikh Shamil's mentorship. And the nikah concluded. And as I was exiting the masjid, Sheikh called me. And he said, this nikah that had been performed must be repeated. So I said, okay, Sheikh. Okay, why? And he said to me, The man who said, I appoint you, Shaykh Mukhtar, as the wakil, was not married to the girl's mother, therefore invalidating the nikah. Sheikh Shamil was spot on. Because the man in this gathering said, I appoint Sheikh Mukhtar to be the wakil. And I accepted the appointment. And a condition of the nikah is that everything must be correct. There can be no misleading statements. Adala is necessary in the nikah. And so, of course, I quickly got to the bride at the breakfast venue and I said, can you confirm that your parents weren't married? And she confirmed. Then I said, then I need your direct appointment. And we re-performed the nikah. May Allah grant Sheikh Shami Jannah for alerting me, because luckily they hadn't had their first night together. So the nikah could be, re-performed in accordance with the conditions. So this is a very important point. So just a general point in the community, if the lady is going to get married, she must declare to the scholar, the alim, that, I fall into the category to appoint you directly. That's very important for that. And then, as I close, inshallah, for this evening, we talk about these qualities. So Muslim, maturity, all of those are understood. But the point of adala I want to touch on, that when a person serves as a wali and as a witness, you must have the quality of adala. And so I'm, of course, sharing the knowledge with the jama'ah so that we uphold this fiqh in all the gatherings we occupy, that the witnesses should be people who are recognized as being trustworthy. And so now you might ask, okay, now how do we do that? So in fiqh, we say everyone is trustworthy unless there's evidence that makes them untrustworthy, that takes them out of the category. So if the person is convicted of theft or convicted of a crime, they lose adala. So in upholding the fiqh in these gatherings of nikah, because it's a contract that is being put through, the witnesses should be people who are, maybe a little bit more mature. And if someone is known to be a liar, like if everyone recognizes, now you can never trust what comes out of that person's mouth, if that is known in a general understanding, then the person has lost adala. It's quite similar to the concept of having fiqh, having, trustworthiness in a scholar in the way they narrate and so forth. So, inshallah, these are very important points that we acknowledge. So we close acknowledging that the wali is needed for the nikah. Secondly, for the nikah to occur, you need the wali and two witnesses. On a side point, the wali can't also be the groom. Very important, eh? So he can't hand the marriage over to himself. So that's another important point. So if it's maybe a revert sister who is appointing the sheikh, whatever it might be, I'm appointing you as the wali, that sheikh, that Maulana can't also, well, I'm giving that lady to myself. You need a separate person. And if the bride doesn't have a wali, the imam is appointed. Jazakallah khairan. Any questions on this point? Yes.
Say for example, we have only the walis of the for the nikah, and then afterwards you find that the reports come in. That person was someone known in the community, maybe a liar or
Mm.
doesn't have adara. Does it affect the nikah or does it?
So Molana is asking the question regarding the wali or the witnesses. So if the witnesses lacked in adala, so the strong opinion is that there would be sihha of the marital contract, provided there were additional people witnessing it, the entire. So perhaps we would say but the certificate is just a formality. But in most cases, a nikah has far more than three people present. So, and if it was also in today's era, I reflect on the fiqh discussion Mufti Ismail Meng had in COVID, because there was a fiqh discussion regarding the majlis of the nikah occurring online. This whole point came up of, can the nikah occur online? And couples contacted me saying, will you perform my nikah online during COVID? And I politely declined because I couldn't reconcile personally with those affordances. But even so, you can have witnesses in today's time extended beyond the physical gathering, but it won't affect the sihah of the contract.
If the bride is illegitimate, can, for example, and then the parents did get married,
Mm.
can she then hand wilaya over to her father?
No, no. So very important point. Very good question. So the question here is, and ladies pose this to me quite often in the marriage classes. I'll repeat the question. The question is, if the bride is illegitimate, right? So her father, she was, say, born out of wedlock. Can she appoint her father as wakil, right? So the answer is yes, she can, but it mustn't be done to trick the audience. So in a gathering, the appointment can't be made so as to trick the audience so that the father pretends to be the wali. So if she appoints the father as wakil, he now has the authority to perform it, but he has been appointed by the route of tawkil, of being appointed, and that appointment must be then announced. It must be known. Yeah.
Is sulh for the family, for example, is that a good enough reason? Like just once, uh, is that a
He
good
wants to
enough?
make the announcement at the nikah. That's a common question. I've had also fathers ask me, it will be very embarrassing if I don't make an announcement at the nikah. This is a common thing in the community. So the point here is, so a father can make an announcement, right? If it is known that he, whatever, wasn't married to the mother, a wakil can transfer tawkil. So a wakil can have the wikala, the tawkil, the appointment to be the agent, and then further transfer it. So let's say Maulana Rushdie and I are both at a nikah, and the bride. This happened actually not with Maulana Rushdie but another alim, a few months ago, where the tawkil is made to a particular alim, but now the alim has the tawkil and can transfer it in the same gathering. So let's say I was appointed wakil and we're sitting here and Mulana says, you know what, I must to perform this nikah. Then I say, okay, Mulana, I now transfer wikala. I make Mulana wakil, but it must be done in the same gathering. And the audience must be aware of what's occurring. There can be no trickery. That's very important, yes. جزاكم خيرا وصلى الله وسلم عليه والحمد لله رب العالمين